Hi everyone, my name is Donjeta from the Institute of Directors. I'm here with my colleague Allie Rennison, who's our Head of EU and Trade Policy, and Jeremy Cook, who is Chief Economist at WorldFirst, and we're here to talk about all things Brexit, I think, today. I think fundamentally it's really hard to talk about Brexit without starting a little bit on transition. So Allie, it'd be good to sort of understand what you expect to get, when you expect rather to get a transitional arrangement in place.
The UK government is aiming to come away from the summit at the end of the March with the ability to commit to businesses that for a minimum period of time there will be no change to cross-border trade arrangements.
What do you think businesses can do in the meantime? Because I think at the moment we're sort of waiting and seeing for what government's going to do for us, but what can businesses do in the meantime?
Quite a lot of businesses, a lot of IoD members are effectively saying that they're going to wait until they know what the end state relationship is, and that may take the better part of the next 18 months to actually finalize, to get put in place. So I think right now, actually there's quite a minority of people who are making any big changes at the moment. So I think one of the important things for businesses to do is to make sure they know where they are, for example, in the supply chain with EU companies, even if they're not trading directly with the EU, what are the different pinch points, mapping out their exposure, I guess, to a certain extent, knowing that if you employ EU nationals, what you need to be doing to get their registration system, for example, in place, looking at setting up shadow supply chains in case that they potentially become less attractive to European businesses as a customer going forward, and familiarising themselves with how the EU tends to treat other third countries.
I mean, it certainly sounds like there's a lot involved for businesses.
I think it's about having kind of frank and honest conversations with, if you're an importer, with your suppliers, if you're an exporter, with your stockists, about how this is likely to affect you, what kind of pricing changes you're likely to see, if you're going to have to see trade terms change in so much that it was 60 days, now it's 90 days, or it's 30 days, or if you're paying in a different currency, for example. Yeah. Businesses are reticent to move simply on the whims of politicians. We've seen that obviously for many, many years, and I don't think they're gambling by enacting contingency plans anytime soon. Hopefully we do get something at the end of March and business can start investing or planning appropriately.
Ali, it would be good to understand, after we've left the European Union, after the transitional period has ended, will existing EU arrangements with other third-party countries cease to exist or apply to the UK?
So obviously everything is subject to negotiation to a certain extent. The government's aim, as far as we know, is to try and roll these over into the transitional period. And then once there's more clarity about what the end trade relationship between the UK and the EU is, then transition them to become sort of standalone bilateral agreements between the UK and the third country in question. Obviously you need to know a little bit more about where the UK and the EU are going to end up to really do that properly. There's all sorts of complicated issues that affect businesses and supply chains, like rules of origin, proving where your goods actually come from. Those can be very complex to renegotiate and to some extent may require the involvement of the EU. So I think that it's likely that they will continue to apply, but a lot of the negotiation to try and replicate them will be done during the transitional period.
I think one of the biggest things, I don't know if you agree with me, Jeremy, but biggest topics of discussion, and actually something that's I think has existed obviously before the referendum and after now is also more prominent, is the concept of being able to do our own trade deals. So yes. How likely do you think, or if at all, is that possible during the transitional arrangement, and then what happens afterwards?
Depends on the transitional arrangement, whether we stay part of the customs union. It certainly stands at the moment that we are likely to do so, and therefore, as being part of the customs union, you're not allowed to go out there and negotiate your own trade deals. So one can't come without the other. So moving forward, is it a case of the transitional deal has access to the single market and access to the customs union for a certain point of that transitional deal, and then after that we're allowed to discuss additional trade deals? But to be honest, as it stands at the moment, it's going to have to happen only happen after we leave.
I think it'd be good to understand, also being chief economist, what you think your expectations are for sterling.
The transitional deal is probably the most important thing for sterling at the moment, because if it's able to, the reason why GDP is probably doing quite so well at the moment, the sentiment surveys, the investment surveys that we're seeing into the UK economy, is because we haven't left the EU yet. If we get a transitional arrangement, then sterling really could outperform a lot of the doubters over the course of the early part of 2018. And you're looking at sterling dollar maybe up to kind of 145. It's about 138 at the moment, so that's about 5 or 6% higher than where it is now, and against the euro back above 120.
Okay, and how do you think businesses can sort of mitigate the risk of fluctuating currency?
Hopefully every business who's trading internationally will have an internal kind of budget rate of where they need to mark their products to obviously make a profit. And if you're selling in one currency, that's very easy, there's no currency risk. But as soon as your business crosses a border, you take on that currency risk. So making sure that you know in sterling dollar, in sterling euro, sterling yen, whatever it may be, there's a minimum rate of which you need to protect to make money, and then go out and protect it.
Of course. We've had I'm sure you both agree, we've had a lot of Brexit speeches recently. In terms of the last, Theresa May's, what are your thoughts on some of the things, some of the clarity that she provided? I think it was quite generally well received, but it would be good to understand, Jeremy, firstly, what are your thoughts?
You know, speeches are speeches, and it all comes down to the negotiations, which are put together in dark rooms. Then finally we get an announcement of what it's likely to look like. Sterling rallied as a result of her saying to the Commons, we are very close to getting a transitional arrangement, which just shows how much disbelief there is that we're close to getting something soon.
You know, if you're a business, you can only read so much between the lines of a speech, and you really need to have some hard, in terms of planning, and what you use to plan, you need to have a little bit more hard textual proposals to really get your head around what the practical impact would be as a result of any changes.
Okay, that's interesting. It's been really great talking to you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.